Amanda with Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com, and it's come to my attention this week that people are improperly using the sagittal appliance technique. If you're putting in an expander, and granted neither of these has a transverse expander, but let's say you're doing a Schwartz expander, upper or lower, and you're like, hey, I think I'll just have the lab throw a few more screws in just cause. Maybe it'll help the patient. No. You need to, anytime you're adding more widgets or things to an appliance, it's going to affect the fit. It's going to make it more complicated. It's going to make it more expensive, and it needs to make sense. So let's talk about a little bit more about the difference and indications for the use of an anterior sagittal, which is usually advancing the premaxilla. Sometimes in this case, it's just these teeth, but usually it's this whole area, depending on where they place the screws. So you need to make it crystal clear if it's an anterior sagittal, is it just some teeth? Is it all the teeth in the front? I usually like the whole premaxilla to be advanced. Or is it a posterior sagittal, which can be unilateral or bilateral? So let's talk about the indications. Of course, you need to do a full treatment workout with the whole orthodontic 8 series of photos, a panoramic x-ray, and ideally a cephalometric x-ray, especially if you are considering the anterior sagittal. Let's talk about why. Okay, so for anterior sagittals, like we said, it's to advance maybe if there's a little bit of an anterior crossbite, but the anterior crossbite needs to be in this indication, which is, first of all, it cannot be skeletal. If it's a skeletal crossbite, you need to be fixing it skeletally. If you don't know what that means, go into my YouTube channel, look up class 3 or face mask, class 3 growing kid. Those are all the keywords you can put in, and I have or just watch my entire phase 1 playlist, which is on the homepage, which has hundreds of videos about phase 1, or you can even take my phase 1 digital course, which is available at Straightsmile Solutions. Go to classes. It is extremely affordable. I just basically made it as cheap as they'd let me make it. And with that, you also get free documents. You get 3 free documents. You can reach out to me if you'd like to obtain your documents. Just send me a receipt. So learn more about fixing class 3 bites in growing kids. This is not how you fix class 3 bites in growing kids. This is how you fix an anterior crossbite that is not skeletal in nature. And you're not going to know if it's skeletal in nature unless you get that ceph x-ray and find out if they have a retrognathic maxilla. If it is a class 1 situation and maybe just the upper teeth are tucked back just due to an interference, and you're taking all the measurements on the ceph and whoop, the upper incisors are retroclined, they're not where they're supposed to be, and just leaning them forward would fix that crossbite problem. And then okay, I'm fine with this. But most of the time when this happens, you have a constricted maxilla as well, and you need to expand first to make the space. You can't just lean the front teeth forward. So just remember, usually this should come with a transverse screw. And then you can also do all of this in Invisalign First or Invisalign Comprehensive. By the way, you can also do this with braces, which is so easy, especially with indirect bonding. It's very affordable. If you don't know how to do it, reach out to me, Straightsmile Solutions. Glad to give you an intro to the lab that we use in the United States. But I'm sure there's ones in every country, which can do a full mouth with brackets, transfer trays, digital planning, everything sent to you digitally. Around $400 US with 3M Unitech brackets, and it's even less if it's just a single arch, and even less if it's just phase 1. So anyways, I digress. But you don't have to have this appliance. And remember, you have to pick the right case, because if the patient is in mixed dentition and teeth are falling out right and left, you know, like back teeth, baby teeth, this sucker is not going to stay in. So it has to be perfect treatment timing to do something like this. If you're going to be pushing this forward, there's going to be a force, right? And it's going to want to dislodge in the back every time you try to turn it. So you better have really good retention. You're only going to have really good retention to retain this sucker in, of course, if the patient wears it, if teeth aren't falling out. So you need to have like a solid anchor in the back for anchorage. So this is not for somebody who's losing teeth. It needs to be in that kind of latency period where maybe they have the front 4 teeth in and the molars, the first molars, but they haven't lost their D's and E's yet, or C's, D's, and E's ideally. Anyways, that's case selection for this, okay? Now let's talk about posterior. Let's talk about case selection for that. So same thing, same problem with anchorage. You can't do this in late mixed dentition. That's not going to stay in. So, and ignore these finger springs. This is just an example. And again, often if there's a problem, you know, you need to look at the whole picture. It might be a skeletal problem. So we don't want to try to fix it with one of these like little uprighting stuff if that's not the issue. So of course you do a full workup, you make sure it's in a situation. So the main reasons I'd use one of these is kind of maybe one of these three things. Number one, let's say the patient is 7 or 8 and they had a baby E pulled early and the 6 started folding over a little, not a lot, into the space. Darn it, it's blocking. I want to put a lingual arch in or a Nance to keep it upright or a space maintainer, but I probably shouldn't because it's leaning forward. I need to upright it first. That's the right thing to do. Again, you could do this with Invisalign first. You could do this with braces. But let's say, and there's some funky fixed appliances, which I call mouse traps, which I would never do because they're just going to cut the patient's mouth up. But let's say you want some cheap, low cost to upright that. Okay, then this is good for that. But you have to take your panum. You have to take a look at the position of the 7 or the second molar. Sometimes it's in a precarious situation where you're going to make the eruption of that worse later, or it's going to block it. So we don't want to make something worse by making something better. So it's a matter of case selection to see if the treatment timing is right. You might have missed the boat on that. Sometimes you have to wait till the second molar drops in order to do this, but then this is not usually the best appliance for that. So keep that in mind. Another situation where I might use one of these, let's say we have a slight class 2 case. And again, with class 2, you got to take your SAF and you got to get your numbers. If the issue of the class 2 is due to mandibular retrognathism or a small mandible, you check your S and B, check your A and B in your Steiner analysis. And again, if you want to know more about SEFs, we have an entire SEF channel, and we also teach a lot of this stuff in our courses, which are very, very, very affordable. And we can also work with you one-on-one. But let's say you have a slight class 2 case. It's dental class 2. It's not skeletal class 2. Or it's due to an advanced maxilla and not a deficient mandible. That is very, very, very rare. You're looking at the profile. If you really, really don't want to advance the mandible to correct it, theoretically, if your 7s are still high enough, you could distalize the first molars to help improve the class 2, then put in some type of anchorage or space maintenance while you're waiting, like a Nance or a TPA, and hold them there until the E's fall out, the 5s come in, and then you've got some solid anchorage to pull against later in comprehensive or phase 2 to close the space. So that would be another indication. On the flip side, you could do the same thing with the lower. If it was a slight class 3 case or something like that, and you were able to scoot that back a little bit before the 7 came up enough to be a problem, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Then put in a lingual arch and then retract the rest of the teeth in phase 2. So those would be, I guess, the 3 main reasons that I'd use the posterior sagittal. I already went over the use of the anterior sagittal. There may be other reasons. But again, these appliances are really affordable. They're less than $200, usually US, sometimes way less than that. But your patient got to leave them in. So if they don't wear them full time, they're not going to work. So no sense in wasting your money on this. And the more you bling this out with springs and funky things, even though it may sound nice, the less likely it's going to fit. And if the darn thing doesn't just drop in when you deliver it, toss it out. Make the lab redo it, because assuming you're doing scan and not in impressions, because you're going to struggle trying to get these guys to fit. And anytime a tooth comes in and out, you're probably going to have to get a new appliance, and that's going to be on you. All right, that's all my tricks and tips for anterior and posterior sagittal case selection. Don't forget, we have a lot of content for free in our YouTube channel, Straightsmile Solutions, as well as we have courses with CE units, as well as we do one-on-one support sessions if you have a case you'd like help with. All right, thanks so much.